In Mexico, the delegations of the Venezuelan government and the opposition signed a second partial agreement guaranteeing social protection for the Venezuelan people following the resumption of talks. Bolivia's Chamber of Deputies passed a law guaranteeing the implementation of results of the population and housing census. Opposition sectors lift the strike in the east of the country. Ugandan authorities announced the suspension of school activities as part of the health policy to prevent the spread of ebola. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Venezuelan government and the opposition's delegations signed a second partial agreement guaranteeing the social protection of the Venezuelan people following the resumption of talks in Mexico City. During Saturday's round of talks, both delegations agreed to continue the dialogues on the basis of the Memorandum of Mutual Understanding signed on August 13th in Mexico City, as well as partial agreement for the protection of the Venezuelan people. The parties reiterated their commitment to peace and dialogue and expressed their willingness to continue the talks during the month of December. For his part, the mediator and representative for the Kingdom of Norway, Dag Nylander, acknowledged the efforts of the delegations of the Venezuelan government and the oppositions to reach an agreement that will bring welfare to the Venezuelan people.
We celebrate the signing of a partial agreement that will allow to make headway for the social protection of the Venezuelan people. We will also set a verification mechanism within the framework of the aforementioned agreement. I want to acknowledge the efforts and the will of the parties during the last months. The delegations, respectively headed by Jorge Rodriguez and Gerardo Blyde, have worked with commitment and prudence to achieve concrete results for the well-being of their people. The agreement presented to the public today has reinforced our conviction that this process is the best way to find a political and inclusive solution for Venezuela.
Venezuelan National Assembly deputy and head of the Venezuelan government delegation for talks with sectors of the oppositions in Mexico, Jorge Rodriguez, said the priority is to tend to the needs of the Venezuelan people affected by the illegal retention in foreign banks of Venezuela's assets.
In this first meeting of the Venezuelan government with its oppositions, we have placed emphasis on a social agreement to tend specifically to the needs of our people. Our position was to insist that the first thing we had to talk about was taking care of the people, of their primary needs, and that addressing such needs, such expectations, had to be financed with the money in the accounts that are illegally blocked. This is what the agreement states, that the funds of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela have been illegally confiscated.
The head of the Venezuelan delegation, Jorge Rodriguez, pointed out that within the framework of the dialogue with the opposition, the discussion should lead to the lifting of the coercive measures illegally applied against Venezuela.
In the coming discussions, we are going to present each and every one of the unilateral coercive measures, wrongly called sanctions, against Venezuela, against our businessmen, against our travelers, against our airlines, against our oil industry, against our financial system, against our right to live in peace, against our agriculture, against our right to trade products, our right to belong to the financial system. All these sanctions must be eliminated on the principles of an agreement with the so-called Venezuelan opposition.
The presidents of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and Colombia, Gustavo Petro, agreed to convene an international conference of Latin American heads of state to rethink drug policy in the region. During a meeting between the two Latin American leaders in the Mexican capital, President López Obrador and his Colombian counterpart agreed to rethink and redesign a security and health strategy to deal with drug trafficking, a problem that has plagued both countries for decades. This after the two presidents, in their first bilateral meeting, recognized the vulnerability of their countries to this scourge and agreed that the current anti-drug policy has been a total failure. During a meeting with the Colombian community living in Mexico, the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, said that the American balance sheet from Alaska to Patagonia in these last 50 years is a disaster.
From Alaska to Patagonia of these 50 years is a disaster. Why we Latin American countries have not met to evaluate what is impacting so negatively in our societies, on our political projects, or on our nations? Why do we have to accept at face value a failed policy that is killing us? Why can't we think of other alternatives?
The escalation of violence continues in Haiti. On Friday, authorities confirmed that armed gangs assassinated the director of the police academy, Rigaud Harrington, in the capital. According to a police report, the events took place on Avenue de Fleury of Port-au-Prince, while Harrington was on his way to the police academy. The report also revealed that the cause of death was a headshot he received from unknown assailants, who used the very commissioner's vehicle to escape. This incident occurred in the midst of an upsurge of violence in Haiti that claimed the life of Chief Commissioner Eva Kellott-Bact of the Croix de Bouquet Police last October 18th. According to the UN, 17 police officers have been killed in this Caribbean country between January and September 2022. NASA's Orion capsule is now circling the moon in an orbit stretching tens of thousands of miles. The capsule, carrying 3 test dummies, entered lunar orbit Friday, more than a week after being launched on a test flight, and it will remain in this broad but stable orbit for nearly a week before heading back home. This is NASA's rehearsal for the next moon flyby, with astronauts scheduled for 2024. A lunar landing by astronauts could follow as soon as 2025. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. Bolivia's Chamber of Deputies passed a law guaranteeing the implementation of results of the population and housing census, thus demanding peace and the suspension of strikes in Santa Cruz. The project, promoted by the Banking of the Movement Towards Socialism, received 6 votes in favor, 1 rejection and 1 abstention. The initiative includes the content of the decree that sets the census for March 23, 2024, and the redistribution of tax-sharing resources for September of that year. It also includes providing census data for the reallocation of legislative seats. After the draft bill was passed by the Commission, the Deputy Chamber President, Jerjes Mercado, sent it to the Senate Chamber, while expressing his hope that its approval will contribute to restore normality and end violence in the Department of Santa Cruz.
To inform that the Chamber has satisfied the Bolivian people by approving the enforcement of the law of population and housing census results in the financial and electoral areas. This law has been approved both in size and in detail by over 2/3 of the votes of the attending deputies, over 119 voters.
We stay in Bolivia. The civic leaders of Santa Cruz, the largest region and economic engine of the nation, announced this Saturday the end of the indefinite strike that they started 36 days ago over the population and housing census. In a press conference, the president of the Pro-Santa Cruz Committee, Rómulo Calvo, announced a 4th intermission to end the strike after the approval of a norm that guarantees the large-scale census. Calvo also pointed out that the people of Santa Cruz are declaring a permanent vigil of all the determinations, managements, and actions of the national government until September 2024. In Italy, at least 1 dead and 0 missing are reported after heavy floods and landslides occurred on the Italian island of Ischia in the Gulf of Naples. According to reports, the island suffered heavy rains that caused flooding and a severe landslide that violently swept away everything in its path from the surrounding mountains in the municipality of Casa Michiola and neighboring areas. Dozen buildings collapsed and almost all the residents of the area are trapped in their homes and without electricity. The Ministry of Defense ordered the immediate intervention of aircraft and armed forces personnel to support the relief efforts, while local authorities called on citizens to stay in their homes and not to move due to the danger still posed by the adverse weather conditions and the serious damage caused by the rains. In the United Kingdom, the transport suspension due to railway workers' strike has started to have a negative effect on the population. Thousands of people had to change their travel plans due to the strike carried out by train drivers of 11 train operating companies, demanding better working conditions and a wage increase to cope with inflation above 11%. In response to the situation, the union's General Secretary, Mick Whelan, who blamed the company representing the operating companies for the failure of the negotiations, extended apologies to passengers for the inconvenience caused by the 24-hour strike. However, he added that the employers' refusal to meet their demands leaves the drivers with no other option but to go on strike. In Spain, members of the police and the civil guard gathered in the center of Madrid to protest against the government for the lack of negotiations on their main labor demands. Members of the Unified Police Union and the Unified Association of the Civil Guards gathered between Puerta del Sol Square and Corts Square, together with their relatives, to reiterate their demand to the government for a negotiating table to discuss their demands, which include early retirement with guarantees, a 35-hour working week, and reclassification to Civil Service Group B. They are called that, so far, the government has not complied with the 2018 agreement for salary pairing to other regional and local police standards. According to the Interior Ministry, since the signing of the aforementioned agreement, police salaries have increased to 26%, and they are expected to rise to 38% in 2024. The European Union postponed negotiations on a price cap for Russian oil due to international disputes. Sources close to the European Council pointed out that there was not enough agreement on the viewpoints of the countries comprising the community bloc. Western media reported that European governments are divided over the G7 initiative on Russian oil and gas that will be enforced on December 5th. During the past day, Poland, Estonia, and Lithuania have been pushing for a much lower crude oil price cap, while Greece, Cyprus, and Malta are calling for a higher limit, as the measure would result in large losses that they could endure. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. Ugandan authorities announced the suspension of school activities as part of the health policy to prevent the spread of Ebola. The Ministry of Education ordered the closure of all preschool, primary and secondary schools as of this Friday, November 25th. This closure comes 2 weeks ahead of the schedule in order to help stop the spread of an Ebola outbreak in crowded places after the confirmation of 23 cases among students. Parents and representatives consider necessary to do this given the health situation in the country. According to the World Health Organization, Uganda registered more than 150 confirmed and probable cases, as well as 64 deaths from Ebola during the last week. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel met with Turkish businessmen in Istanbul during a stopover on his return trip from his international tour through Africa, Asia, and Europe. Through a message published on Twitter, the Cuban presidency informed that the meeting between the Cuban president and Turkish businessmen had been set up by DAIC, a business diplomacy organization that manages foreign relations for the Turkish private sector. The meeting aimed at promoting ideas and projects to further relations between Turkish and Cuban businessmen. Díaz-Canel's tour included Algeria, Turkey, Russia, and China. This Saturday, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo announced that the next presidential election is set for December 20th, 2023.
The 20th, 2023 will be the day of the organization of a direct election of the President of the Republic, the national deputies, the provincial deputies, and the communal councillor. The issue of security, the war is in the east because elections have a characteristic, inclusive. If a part of a country does not participate in the decision, this could be a problem of inclusiveness, so we're working on that.
In Belarus, authorities confirmed the death of Foreign Minister Vladimir Mackay at the age of 64. According to local media, the news was announced by the press secretary of the Belarusian Foreign Ministry, Anatoly Glass. Mackay headed the Belarusian Foreign Ministry for more than a decade, since August 20, 2012. He has also headed the administration of that nation's president since 2008, having served as an aide to the president from 2000 to 2008. According to Glass, neither the cause of death nor the circumstances of his death are known at the moment. Kazakhstan's re-elected president Kassym-Jomart Tokayev was sworn on Saturday, thus becoming officially beginning his second term in office. After winning the election last Sunday with over 80% of the votes, the re-elected president pledged loyalty to the nation and to remain worthy of the trust of the Kazakh people. Citing national expressions referring to honesty and justice, Tokayev thanked all those who took part in the elections. Kazakhstan is going through a process of reforms, which ensued protests occurred earlier this year, which prompted presidential elections to be held ahead of schedule. On the seventh day of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022, Kylian Mbappé scored twice, including a late winner, as holders France edged Denmark 2-1 on Saturday to become the first team to reach the last 16 of the World Cup. A strong French side knew a second victory in as many Group D teams would take them through to the knockout phase, and they were well worth the lead that Mbappé gave them when he opened the scoring at Stadium 974 just after the hour mark. However, Andreas Christensen soon equalized for the Danes, and Le Bleu needed Mbappé to deliver again in the 86th minute as he turned in Antoine Griezmann's cross to puncture the Danish resistance once and for all. Having scored 4 during France's victorious 2018 campaign and 1 against Australia, Mbappé now has 7 goals in 9 World Cup appearances. Australia won 1-0 thanks to a goal from Mitchell Duke in the 23rd minute. Tunisia had more possession of the ball and more chances during the match, but they could not score. With this victory, Australia has won against teams from 3 different continents, Asia, Africa and Europe, in World Cups. Australia began their 2-game winning. Against France they finally lost, but facing Tunisia they could defend the advantage and got 3 points. Robert Lewandowski scored the first World Cup goal of his career when he netted in Poland's 2-0 win over Saudi Arabia. However, it was a battle for Misniewicz side, who were leading at the point thanks to Zielinski's roof finish and an incredible double save from the Polish goalkeeper after Salem Al-Dawsari penalty late in the first half. Renard's Saudi team came out with the bit between their teeth, and the Poles frequently struggled to handle their aggressive press. This Saudi team had the most clear chances to score in the game but failed to do so. And as the hearts of millions of fans live the emotions of the Qatar 2022 World Cup, teleSUR joins this sporting event with From the Field, a show that brings news, analysis, reviews and more to our audience. Don't miss it, our show airs at 1 p.m. local time in Caracas and 12 p.m. New York. Remember, From the Field, only on teleSUR. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.